So welcome to this virtual theology chat with the Anglican Women's Studies Centre. Our evening is going to be started with Bridie Marsden-Boyd, who is one of the counsellors for the Anglican Women's Studies Centre. Over to you, Bridie.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's so lovely to see you all. So obviously a huge welcome to Silvia Purdie, who is an incredible woman with many, many hats. She is a Presbyterian minister, a counsellor, a supervisor, a writer, a sustainability consultant, and also looking at her many incredible qualifications, I think she's a bit of an eternal student. This evening, we are lucky to have her here to talk about her new book, Awhi Mai Awhiatu, Women in Creation Care, which tells the stories of 30 women from a wide diversity of cultures, and they all have involvement in environmental action. Silvia collated the rich stories, poems and prayers from people as young as 12 and as old as 80 from all over the country. We're also going to be joined a bit later, I can't see her at the moment, but hopefully she's coming, by Cynthia Murphy, who amongst other things works for the General Synod Office as Operations Support Manager to the Provincial General Secretary. And we'll also be joined by Courtney, who I did see, but has now moved on my screen, from Kaikoura, who is the Creation Care Enabler for the Nelson Diocese, as well as a parish priest. And I'm also told that she is the New Zealand Director for CCSP, the Creation Care Study Program. So a very lovely lineup for our evening today. I'm now going to hand over to Silvia and then to our other speakers for I'm sure will be a very fascinating talk.
Well, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to Courtney, and also, is that Marie Preston there?
It is, Silvia. Kia ora.
Have you been to any of these women's studies hui before?
I have, but a while ago, I have to admit.
Yeah. Well, Marie's another one of our contributors as well. So that's great. We've got two of the team joining us tonight to share about their experiences. Oh, and Rosemary's here as well. Rosemary? Rosemary and Murray are in the Pawatahanui Anglican Parish, and that is lovely to have you both here. I'm going to begin with one of the karakia from the book. I'm going to share my screen, and this is a prayer written by one of our lovely women in Masterton, and it has a simple response. So I'm sure you Anglican folks are good at this kind of thing. So, prayer by Anna Beige. Let's pray. Ka inuit tātou. As mountains crumble, as coastlines disappear, we look to you. Have mercy. As ecosystems break down, as communities unravel, we look to you. Have mercy. As forests burn, as species are wiped out, we look to you.
Have mercy.
Have mercy. Save us from ourselves. Show us a new way. We are nothing except by your grace. We look to you. Have mercy.
Have mercy.
I'm going to begin with a song now. This is, you would have noticed the title of our book is Am I unmuted? Sorry. Is that okay? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. That's odd.
I can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you, Silvia. It's good.
Okay, right. It seemed to suddenly mute itself. Must have clicked it by mistake. A lovely song by Hirini Melbourne, Etsu Kahikatea. So I'm going to sing it, and if you know it, you can sing it along, but we'll probably best to stay muted. Otherwise, you'll confuse me with the lag. So that we'll do Māori English. E tu ka hekatea, he whakapai ururoa, awhi mai awhi atu, tātou tātou e. Stand tall, ka hekatea, stand brave in the face of the storm. We are loved, we are loving, we will stand as one. E tu puriri, tohara o peka, awhi mai awhi atu, tātou tātou e. Stand strong, puriri tree, reach out your beautiful branches. We are loved, we are loving, we will stand as one. So that was really a big part of my kind of sense of calling from the Lord, really, to bring this work, this sense of standing together, and this real sense of kind of resonating with the song of this land, with people from many different backgrounds. Right. So here are some of the women from many different backgrounds there. In the middle at the top is just Cynthia, who doesn't seem to have been able to join us. She wasn't sure if she could. I'll keep an eye out for you a bit later on, to Cynthia. And there's some of our wonderful women. And at the bottom right corner is 12-year-old Ava, who is here with her teacher and principal from the Enviro School. Then the top right is Elise, who is a climate activist with the Diocese of Wellington. And on my left, we've got Jill McDonald, who's a Presbyterian minister in the Hawke's Bay, who's doing a solar farm, trying to address energy poverty. And in the bottom left, there's the very fabulous Mina Pomare Peita, who's a Catholic school principal in the Hokianga. I was absolutely delighted to have Ruth Valerio. She's quite well known in especially more evangelical circles. She's based in the UK. She is works globally for Tia Fund and other organisations, and is quite the writer herself. And so she blessed us with a foreword. So I thought I'd just read this out to you. It's quite a lovely introduction to the work. She writes, we can make a difference. We can reach out and use our blessings to help others. We can learn from each other and benefit from the wisdom of the generations in cultures very different to our own. I've experienced those connections in reading Awhi Mai, Awhi Atu. It is full of so many inspiring and wonderful women, all drawing on their life experiences to be people who care for the land and the seas and all the creatures, human and wider, that share these spaces. No woman's experience can be replicated, but as you read, my prayer is that you'll be inspired to use your own experiences and connections to walk your road of care for this wonderful but so wounded world that God has made. And know as you do, you are in good company. Just offer some of my reflections now. I wanted to, these are really the kind of some of the questions that have guided me. How do we notice God at work? What prompts us to change, to do things differently or invest our energy in a new direction? And what do we pay attention to in order to hear God's call on our lives? To me, there's no more interesting question than what is God up to? And there's nothing more worthwhile to do with my life than be part of what God is doing in the world at this time. For me, in my own work, this quite surprised me by taking me out of parish ministry, which is where I always assumed that I would best serve God. But God took me out into the big, wide open space of the community sector and therapy and writing books and climate action. Without the institution of the church to define for me what God is doing, the question becomes all the more critical. And it becomes all the more important to tune up our skills for noticing God at work and responding to God's call on our lives. Well, these questions led me into the work of interviewing interesting women. What could be more interesting than interviewing interesting women? Now, partly this was because of lockdown last year. I was not able to get quite so far with some of the other projects I had on the go. And it turned out that actually writing was quite a good thing to do in a pandemic. But doing this talk tonight is a good challenge for me to step back a little bit from the project, which is just literally just this day finished in terms of being sent through to the publisher. So this work is really just complete, and then there'll be the whole other process of printing and selling and promoting the work. But it's a good chance for me to reflect on what I've learned, and particularly on this question of noticing God at work. Well, firstly, it has affirmed my hunch that one of the really good places to look for God at work is in the lives of godly people. And I found a fancy name for this: narrative missiology. Actually, I think I made it up. It's probably not a thing at all, but it makes sense to me. It is missiology because it is the study of God at work in the world. And it is narrative because it looks in the ground of ordinary, everyday people rather than in the work of institutions and organizations, even the church. Though actually along the way, we have told the story of one particular organization, Arosa Aotearoa New Zealand. And we have just so happened to have recorded the history of its establishment in Aotearoa New Zealand. But that was a bonus. The focus is on the women for whom faith means leadership and service, and for whom their discernment of their calling by God is to, among other things, environmental action. It's just a natural thing for women to work together, I think. Not just women, men as well, I'm sure, but I just kind of happened to have done just a woman for this project. But that's the working together kind of becomes a thing. We kind of create energy, and you know this as a Women's Studies Centre, that working together can enable more people to catch a vision and to sustain that vision in effort. There's something important about working collaboratively. In this book, I wanted to put all of that in the context of ordinary human lives, to ask people to reveal themselves in a public arena turned out to be more challenging than initially I thought, actually. It's a big ask. Who am I really? What am I willing for others to know about what motivates me and the struggles that I've been through and the things that I hope for, the ways that I'm making sense of things and how my faith has changed since my youth? It's a big ask to ask people to put that into a book. One of the through this process has been this lovely sense of threads of life coming together. I think all the women, and I'd love to hear from those of you that are here how you found it. I'll ask you in a minute. But all the women have talked about different threads coming together. I always struggle with her name. Ani Kartikasari is from Indonesia originally, and now she leads the Sustainable Business Centre at Lincoln University. She describes it this way: when I was a child, I didn't know it was a calling. I just enjoyed being in nature. When I was at university, I was privileged to learn ecology as an academic subject, and it formed my understanding of how things are connected. I found my role in that. When I came to faith, this was all bound together into a strong foundation. I have this passion, I have this training in mission, theology, and academic, and I have these opportunities. God has a plan for me, she said. Now, you don't need to do the academics or have a high-profile position to make an impact for God. One of the chapters is from a woman called Marg, who is a full-time mum. Her story is around recovery as a family from mental illness, and the power that they discovered of simplicity, growing food, and cycling together. It's a simple but very moving story. Over and over, I've been blessed with women sharing with me, sharing bravely with me and others, that they trust that God is in their story, even through moments when they could no longer feel that. Like when Elise was caught in the Kaikoura earthquake and for a long time afterwards struggled to feel safe or to see God in the mountains. So God at work in our own stories is a kind of a central theological claim, I guess, of this project. Secondly, this project has affirmed the biblical principle that God calls us for such a time as this. We are in crazy times. There are big shifts going on in our society, our world, our climate is changing, and we know now that we are to blame. All the women in this book have seen for themselves the destruction of our environment, and they are motivated to act. It's not just someone else's problem. I can do something in my own space, in my own way, here and now. That's a key mission principle that comes through again and again. Be where you are. Make a difference here and now. We are making history as we do this. This has been so exciting for me to document the ways in which women are making history at this point in our history. And lastly, I could rave on, but I won't. As this work developed, I knew that it had to have two other things as well as telling women's stories. It needed to be practical, and it needed to be prayerful. When I come to answer this question of how do we notice God at work, how do we pay attention, how do we hear God, there's really two paths, and we need both at the same time. Some people at different stages of our lives, we're more action oriented, and some are more reflective oriented, and that's part of our life journeys and personalities, is to perhaps focus more in one than the other, but we need them both together collectively. These are like twin tire tracks, I suppose. So in this book, we've got Annalisa, who writes fabulous poetry, and that's her calling. And we've got karakia threaded through the book. And we have over 80 action points. Over 80. Completely nuts to have over 80. And part of the reason I wanted to have so many was to make it blatantly obvious that no one could possibly be doing all of them. You know, I think that's somewhere where we go as women, isn't it? Oh, we've got to do this. We've got to do this properly and, you know, tick the boxes or do creation care. But actually, I wanted to say there is just a whole ton of different ways that we can do creation care, that people already are doing creation care. Surely in that, anyone and everyone can find things that are really achievable and fun, maybe even, and probably several you're already doing. So I hope that the action cheers people on. So to finish, my theology here is all about grace and the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. God fires us up and sustains our energy, and God's work is marked by joy and peace and love. There is no shortage of guilt and pressure and despair and blame whirling around in the world, but it's not for us to buy into. We have to keep kind of extracting ourselves from it and finding this other place from which to work. We work from within the kingdom of God because we are women of Jesus Christ. Environmental action and leadership for us comes from a place of grace and freedom. Right, I'm going to ask the other woman now. Oh yeah, there's Annie there. I had her quote on the screen. Isn't she gorgeous? Right, let's start with Courtney. Are you there, Courtney? Can you unmute? Courtney, how are you there? Hello? No.
Here I am.
There she is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. You've got a couple of minutes to share how it was for you being part of this project.
Well, I really appreciated the opportunity to reflect, because while I consider myself a reflective person, life can get so full that a great deal of time can pass, and then you can realize, wow, when is the last time I've properly reflected on my journey? And so thank you, Silvia, for creating space for us to be able to do that. And I was really heartened by the whole thing, because I realized just how far I've come on the journey. I didn't grow up in a church, but when I came to faith as a teenager, it was in a conservative Baptist church, which was dualistic to the max. And it's been a long journey of unlearning those dualisms, and I'm still on that journey. But having the opportunity to reflect made me realize how far I've come. And so that was really encouraging. And just really affirmed for me the importance of place in it all. I feel a deep attachment to Kaikoura, where I've lived for the past 13 years. I'm originally from Southern Ontario. And I was just reminded of God's faithfulness in rooting me in a place for the long haul. And when I was ordained, I said to the bishop at the time, you know, I feel called to Kaikoura. So please don't try to move me anywhere else, because the calling for me is also to a place. And so writing that chapter encouraged me to reflect on the importance of place in my journey.
And you had other wonderful. I mean, some of my interview with Courtney happened as we were walking around trails around Kaikoura, and she was talking about there's this kind of processes of spiritual reflection and integrating the wildlife and the wild places with the poetry and the scripture and the other reading that she's doing, and it was just a really very kind of grounded spiritual practice in ministry.
And I think I wrote, I can't remember if it made it into the chapter, but we were talking about how transformative poetry can be, in particular in helping us to see things as a whole and not in a dualistic kind of way. Joy Cowley's poems are so simple, but so beautiful, and that often her poems challenge a dualistic way of thinking. And I often like to take a poem with me as I walk and try to commit it to a memory, one line at a time. And there's something about the walking, there's something about the rhythm of it, and the rhythm of the poetry all coming together as I walk.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Courtney. That's lovely. Can I ask, Mari, would you like to share tonight? Mari. if you unmute, Murray, unmute, can't hear you.
How's that?
Hello, hello.
A very good evening. How lovely to see you in the flesh again. Well, sort of.
Murray has been a real activist for this, and fascinating. Courtney brings this other experience through the Creation Care Study Program. Murray brings an extraordinary kind of experience in leading an environmental action group way before it was trendy, way before other people were doing it. Has been a real pioneer in this space. But what about, how was it for you, you know, having the interview and writing a chapter?
Well, thank you, Silvia. And I wasn't thinking that I would be talking, but I think for me it's been a deepening process and a clarity, I suspect, and with your persistence, Silvia, because you and I've had a lot of back and forth, and I've yes, it hasn't always been that I suspect I've become more and more focused, which is a good thing, because I'm you know, I would never ever have conceived that I put a book together, a chapter, let alone the low carbon challenge cookbook, together in 3 months. I mean, when I think of your thoroughness and the editing and the process, and I think, oh my goodness me. However, in spite of that, and for those that won't possibly remember or have even read the chapter that you interviewed me on,
Nobody's read it yet. It hasn't been. It's only just.
Well, I think the first thing is that the book continues to tell its stories through the recipes. Only last week somebody said to me, Mary, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and I'm doing something else from that book. And I think, oh, I've forgotten about the book, you know, like forgotten about the content. And then every like this Monday is Anzac Day, and I've been asked to make a heap of Anzac biscuits for Somerset. And I thought, oh yeah, the book will have it. And of course it's Afghans, it hasn't got Anzac biscuits in it. And there are many things that some people have indicated, Mary, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do that? Well, I didn't. But coming back to the sense of God in the process, I would like to reaffirm that each step of the way, the power of prayer, the power of connection to not only the humanity that is around us, but the environmental issues. And that is nature versus humanity. It's nature and human and God, and we're all one. And I think that is more and more real for me. And I think during this Lenten process and post-resurrection, for the first time ever, today in the service that I had supported for Somerset a Aotea, and because it was post-Easter, I talked about my resurrection story. And everybody there thought, help. And so they were all silent. And there were many questions that I didn't anticipate, nor did I expect that others wouldn't share their resurrection stories, because, well, you know, we all have them, I think. But however,
lovely. Yeah. So just kind of naming those things and seeing how God is working now, and also through things that have happened in the past. Thank you. That's very well put. Well, we've got two other of our contributors here. There's wonderful Rosemary and also Nicola Hogarth-Quick, and I noticed your name there. Would I just unmute and say hi if you'd like to comment? Are they being quiet? Rosemary, Nicola?
Okay. Here I am. Sorry, I was hiding in the background.
You are. That's right. Hello, Nicola. If those of you who haven't met Nicola, she is involved with Arosha as a chair and is co-director for New Zealand Christians in Science, in which she also works as my boss. I do some part-time work for Christians in Science as well. But how was it for you, Nicola, the process of sharing this?
Well, I've just been amazed at how amazingly quickly you have managed to bring all this together. Whenever I edit books or write them, they go very, very slowly. And so I thought it was quite extraordinary how quickly you've done all this. And it's amazing that you have so many voices and that you found them all. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. So, as you know, I was giving my piece in a different context than in the interview context. So I just sort of like regurgitated that and sent it off to you. But at the beginning of mine, I do pay a tribute to my mother, who had just died a few days before I gave the talk. And I think that is also something I would want to say, though, that there have been mothers and women before us who've done all this work that was mostly unheralded and unnoticed in the past as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I just check with you, Rosemary? Were you trying to speak? Because you need to unmute. Unmute. It looks like she's talking. There we go.
There we go.
Yes.
I came into this interviewing by meeting you, Silvia, at the hui that was held here in Wellington at Pahatanui on the 30th of October. And we got talking, and you sprung it on me. That was okay. I think I got up and spoke about a group of us here at our retirement village that had got together to actually do some sustainability in the sense of keeping things out of the landfill. So I was enormously grateful to have the opportunity, Silvia, and I thank you for your patience beyond anything I've ever known, really, in how I took a long time to put it down on paper, and what has come out of this really is that we're doing the collection actually tomorrow, and the group has been is really working very well together now. I've been inspired really by the feeling that other people care about what we're doing, and also we've just started at our two churches at Pahatanui, keeping things out of the landfill. But I think possibly one of the most important parts about it, I was thinking today, we're not able to really meet and do the collection inside the main building. So it is to be, and they can't find the key to the garage that we might be able to. Last month, we had it out in the rain as well. But this time I'm determined to actually
do a lot of collecting beforehand, which has been happening today. And really it's a connection. It is a connection with the people about the things that they are collecting and the things that they care about, that really but possibly the most important part of it. So thank you for the opportunity, Silvia, and thank you again for your patience.
That's all right. Folks, did you just hear what Rosemary said? I mean, this has been the amazing privilege of this. Yeah, I just want to just really highlight Rosemary's sense, and Rosemary's just, a wonderful, but, just a person, but Rosemary's talked about determination and care and teamwork and finding God in the middle of those things. And that's a very beautiful summary. Thank you, Rosemary. I've just wrapped around this kind of the task of, which is not something most people would choose, to focus on keeping stuff out of landfill. And there's a whole range of different ways that we can keep stuff out of landfill. So that's the kind of outcome, the environmental outcome. But the work that Rosemary and Mari and all the others are doing is doing all these things at the same time, this kind of heart determination, building up teams of others, and bringing it prayerfully as part of a sense of calling. So that's the book. Thank you. I'd love to hear what your questions are.
Well, Silvia, thank you so much. It's so inspiring, and some of your phrases have just been so cool. I've been writing them down. I love your narrative missiology, which is, women telling stories, sharing what we know and putting it all together in what sounds like such a creative and engaging way. And I really liked your bit when you said God calls us in such a time as this. It's like the here and now. That's where we are. We are where we are, and we're here and we're now, and this is what we can do. So it's been really great to hear that, and so great that we had 4 of your contributors here as well. So we could go on, we could hear much more. Wondering if you're going to have a book launch when you're going to, and people will speak more. So if you are, let us know and we'll publicise it.
Hopefully in each of the main centres we'll have a launch, because people are spread right around the country.
Right, excellent, thank you. So now I shall unmute everybody, and if you'd like to say something, either just jump in or on the reactions down the bottom, you can find a hand if you want to put your hand up. So Bridie has got her hand up, so she's going to go first.
Before you do that, I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt and just share. We've got one more slide, and this one is just a couple of practical resources here for you. So I've had a Give a Little page. If any of you have used Give a Little, it's just simply called Women in Creation Care. There's the I'll see if I can copy it and put it in the chat. Oops, that didn't work. And then on my website, which is called Conversations, I've put some sneak peeks. So I've copied in there the introduction, the book list, which is a wonderful resource, and some other, the text from my text from this evening, and a few other things. So if you want to just jot those down, they're quite easy to search on Google. So I'll pop those things into the chat as well.